started this edition of Overrated Foods.
Yeah, I saw that.
And for the first one, it's carrot cake, which in my opinion is very, very overrated.
Okay.
I'm not saying it's horrible or it's a bad food. I'm just not a carrot cake guy. Second for me is olives. I want no part of them. Okay. I don't care if it's a black olive, a green olive. I'm not colorist toward olives. I just don't like any of them.
You sound pretty colorist right now, to be honest.
I'm not colorist.
Black olives. Look,
you want me hot take?
Coleslaw, it's coleslaw and pickles. Overrated.
How do you not like coleslaw?
Bread and butter pickles are delicious, David.
Get it out of here.
They're delicious. Coleslaw, I can understand that, but you want a hot take? You really want a hot take? Let's get serious in here. It's a Friday. Let's wake up in the morning, get to the breakfast table, and talk about how overrated pancakes are.
Okay, first off, you can shut up. And
waffles are so much better than
Just
pancakes.
because they're not as good as waffles.
It's not even close.
There's
so many better breakfast food than pancakes. It's not even close.
We're not starting the show off with you trashing pancakes. I can
just
promise.
got started off like
waffles are better.
Promise
it just got started off like that, you know?
Yeah.
Pancakes, mid at best.
Yeah, we'll talk about that later. Former Broncos general manager Ted Sundquist joins us to break down the NFL Draft Day 1. We'll give you our winners and losers from the first round as well, and we'll preview the top NBA and NHL matchups this weekend. I'm Jake Crane, and welcome to the sports show that's slowly taken over the planet. It's Crane and Company. As we all know, round 1 of the NFL draft is by us after last night. There were some ups, there were some downs, there were some reaches, and there were some good picks. And what a great way to start the show after the first round of the NFL draft by bringing on a former GM, a guy that was a part of 2 Super Bowls, was with the Broncos, and John Elway was a director of scouting. He's been in the meat grinder. He understands how the sausage is made, and that is Ted Sundquist, former Denver Broncos GM, joining us right now to kick off the show, and I couldn't be more excited. Booster Club, make sure you get your questions in. We're going to ask him. We've got him here for a little bit. So, Ted, how's it going, man?
It's going great. Just do me a favor. Don't say anything about pecan pie. I'm a Texan.
Oh, no, listen.
And listen, I mean.
Go ahead, Ted. Go ahead.
If you go after pecan pie, my email and my Twitter account will be exploding with all my Texas buddies.
Yeah, well, Ted, my thing is the minute we start going after pecan pie on this show is the minute where it's going to get physical on the set in front of God and everybody. So you don't have to worry about that. Pancakes, we're going to talk about that later. I'm going to straighten that out. But pecan pie, that's off limits. You keep your hands off my drum set. That's what you have to understand about pecan pie. But I really appreciate you coming on.
Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate it. It's always exciting to look at how teams are trying to improve this time of year, kind of bring football into the spring. I know we've got spring football now, but with the NFL draft, it's always fun to see who's willing to go out there and try to improve and who's still trying to figure it out.
For sure, and I want to dive into that with you, but I can't bring on the former GM of the Broncos without asking your thoughts on Russell Wilson going to Denver and looking at that AFC West, which is basically like trying to fight your way out of a UFC gym as a walk-in. It's going to be tough.
Yeah, it really is, and they needed a quarterback. They needed a leader at that position to really come in and give them confidence. They felt really good about their defense, but you've got to score points in this league. And they've just struggled over the course of the last few seasons with finding a guy since Peyton Manning had left and that Super Bowl win in 50 to lead them. And to be honest with you now, over the course of Denver for the better part of the last 30 or 40 years, they've really relied upon people to come in from the outside and not necessarily an internal pick to develop and bring up. And I know people will say, well, wait a minute, you had John Elway, the Broncos drafted John Elway. They did. And he took them to a number of Super Bowls, but they could never get over that hump. And recall Mike Shanahan came in after having been there. Mm-hmm. And I kind of looked at John a lot like a free agent acquisition for Mike, resetting the culture, building around a veteran quarterback. And then as you look at it, after John retired, we went to Jake Plummer, we went to Peyton Manning, and now Russell Wilson. And I know Bronco fans are excited.
For sure. I can't wait to see how it works out. Just that division alone with, you got Herbert at the Chargers, Derek Carr, obviously now with Devontae Adams and the Raiders, and we know the Witch Festival that is hanging out at Arrowhead with Mahomes and the boys. But, Ted, I want to ask you, but before we get into the storylines of round 1, kind of what you thought, because this draft is an anomaly, in my opinion, from a personnel standpoint and not knowing, hey, who's definitely the number 1 guy, how many trades you're going to get, which it was crazy, and how defense heavy that first round was outside of the wide receiver position and the offensive tackle position, mainly talking about quarterback. But Ted, how many scenarios you've got a first round pick? I don't care, if it's 15 or if it's 25. If you're in the middle of that round to the latter part of that round, I know the Broncos didn't have a pick yesterday, but if you're in that room, how many different scenarios have you guys gone through in getting ready for, to see something like the Lions trading up to get Jamison Williams, or, the Packers yesterday kind of left empty-handed with wide receivers in the first round. So how many scenarios are going through your mind, and have you guys kind of prepared for in what you think may happen?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. And I think that the war rooms that are effective are ones that have more than just one scenario. We'll wait for the pick to fall down to us at 19. And if our guy's there, then great. And if he's not, we'll go to the second guy. And if he's not there, we'll go to the third guy. Really, I think effective war rooms, and we tried to do this in Denver because we were usually picking on the back end over the course of the Shanahan years, was to be able to understand what might be there at that particular pick, but what would happen and what would it cost to move up if someone that we saw value and someone that could come in and have an impact, usually on a playoff team, would we be willing to spend what it would take to move up and do that? Case in point, for instance, in 2005, we lose to the Pittsburgh Steelers and we're 29th. We lose to the Steelers in the AFC Championship. We're picking number 29. We get into a three-way trade with the Jets, and I'm trying to remember, it might have been Atlanta, to move up to number 15 prior to the start of the draft. So we made a trade just to get up into the middle of the draft. And then that was the year of Leinart, Cutler, and Vince Young. And we knew we had Jake Plummer, and we had a situation with a veteran quarterback. But we saw what Green Bay had done with Brett Favre and Aaron Rodgers. And we had an opportunity in a quarterback kind of heavy draft where three of them, where everybody thought those guys could play at the time. Now, I know things changed a little bit. But we thought, hey, if the opportunity comes to jump up and grab one of those guys, would we do it? And we went through that scenario over and over prior to the draft. Well, sure enough, what happened? Leinart and Cutler came falling down. We got to about pick number 10, and that's when I turned to coach and said, hey, we're at a point now where we feel like the value of moving up to grab a guy that normally we couldn't get as a playoff team and put him behind a guy like Jake Plummer. Would you be willing to do it? And sure enough, he was. And we had an opportunity to move up and get Jay Cutler. We did. And, ultimately it didn't work out in Denver. He goes to Chicago, and, kind of the rest is just whether or not you're a Cutler fan or not. But the opportunity was there. We had worked through that scenario, as well as going backwards. You've got to be willing to, hey, don't force a pick. If your guy's not there and it just doesn't make sense, both on your roster, your two deep roster, as well as from a cap perspective, get out of it. See if you can't move back. There are teams that there's something there that they need and are willing to move up. But if you don't answer that phone, then you're stuck picking.
Very true. And Ted, I want to throw a hypothetical at you. I know you probably didn't have a ton of experience with this, with the success you guys had at Denver, but I'm looking at the quarterback class of this draft. And if I'm the Falcons, or maybe I'm a team that we know from a roster standpoint after the moves we've made, we're not going to be there probably next year. I'm looking at Bryce Young and C.J. Stroud in that next quarterback class, maybe a few other guys. How hard is it being someone that's in charge to say, you know what, instead of forcing a pick for a quarterback this year and trying to make the fans happy, being smart and making the long-term play to help the franchise have success as quick as possible in the next 3 to 4 years, maybe not the next year? Is that something you debate with making the fans happy, but also making the smart choice? Because most of the time, those two things can't exist in the same realm.
Yeah, that's another great question. And here's the deal. I think it all depends upon ownership, their patience, their understanding of what you're trying to do. If you've gone to your ownership, and we were blessed to have one of the great all-time owners in the NFL, and Pat Bowlen, who wanted to win. He wanted to win now, but he wanted to win consistently over the long haul as well. And he wasn't willing to make stupid decisions that would cost us both in the near term, but also in the long term. He wanted stability. He wanted to be in it year after year after year. And if you've had an opportunity to sit down with your owner and explain to him, look, to try to force a quarterback in is not only unfair to that player himself, but unfair to the rest of our roster as well. Give us a chance to try to, maneuver and manipulate. You never know what's going to happen coming out of the final cuts. Somewhere in there, always a veteran player that you weren't anticipating gets cut from a roster, perhaps because of his contract. He's going into his last year. A young player steps up, something there that might enable you to bring a guy on later. But trying to force it, I think, is the wrong move.
Yeah, well, like they say, just because you can do something doesn't mean you should do it.
Ted, how are you, man? It's great to see you again.
Great to see you, buddy.
Thanks so much.
You're not aging at all, man. You look exactly the same.
Well, that's great. And the team here is doing their job. That's wonderful.
A lot of people think he just bought Twitter.
Yeah, they say I look like Elon Musk now, Ted, so I don't know about that. But I really appreciate you doing this. We get asked a lot about the team philosophy on picking based off need or the best available player. And something we talk about a lot is, well, how generational is that best available player and how severe is that team need? What was your philosophy when you're sitting there and it's time to send in the pick and you're trying to decide against, what we need this year coming up, but also you have a guy that maybe is the best available on the board? What was your philosophy?
Our philosophy, by and large, Dave, was to build the team with a plan. And that plan was there were a number of different areas that you could go to add talent to your football team. What's the first one? It's free agency. And we've already bypassed that. But teams have had a chance to go out and spend their money, go after the big time, free agent, or make a trade and bring on a big player like they did here in Denver. And then that fills some slots. And then you look up at your board and you're probably like, all right, well, we're weak here as a starting position. So let's see what we can do early in the draft to try to fill a need, let's say at the number 2 wide receiver, or maybe at a starting tight end, or maybe even a young offensive lineman that you see has ability to learn and grow with a veteran group around him. And then, from that perspective, as you're filling in the rest of your roster, you can kind of pull back. You can look at, hey, let's don't force this as we were talking about. Let's make wiser decisions on the back end, gain some depth, get some young guys. Again, in Denver, we were very fortunate to have stability at the coaching position. And so we had an opportunity as a personnel department to bring on young talent that we knew the coaches were going to work with over the course of time and not just force them in, give them 1 year and then, hey, get him out of here, get me somebody else. So we were always looking at it from a need perspective. I look at yesterday's draft, and I know we're going to talk about that. It seemed to me that there were a lot of teams that were reaching for best available athlete. I didn't scout these guys as closely as I've done in the past, certainly, but in reading some of the scouting reports, there were a lot of height, weight, speed, great athleticism, but really didn't play up to his potential or had an off year or this or that. And that's concerning to me at times when you go reach for an athletic platform if you don't have a culture in your club that's willing to take the time to develop that athlete.
No, for sure. That makes sense. Let's stay on the Broncos here for a second. We were talking the other day about how you guys had Elway, and he lost a couple of those initial Super Bowls, and you had to put the pieces around him to win those 2 Super Bowls that he won. And then kind of with Peyton Manning, it was a different situation. You had the team already assembled. You brought Peyton Manning in. Now the Broncos have now brought Russell Wilson in. What do you think they need to do? They didn't have a first-round pick yesterday. They have the last pick, I believe, today in the second round. What do you think the Broncos need to do here around Russell Wilson to really build something special?
Well, yeah, that's a great question. By and large, they're very confident in their defensive talent. And they've got a good defense that I think put a lot of pressure on folks. But they were also out on the field quite a bit last year. And eventually on a 17-game season like we play now, that wears your guys out, towards the end of the year. They've got to find a way to get that defense off the field and a little bit more ball control. They've got some talented guys at the wideout position. They've worked to build the offensive line slowly over the years here. They're pretty good at running back. I would like to see a guy back there more in line with, a Terrell Davis and the productivity that we used to have in running the football. As you get older at quarterback, certainly you don't want to move around quite as much. So protection of Russell is going to be quite important. So I would just like to see some depth on that offensive line, and maybe an impact guy that can tote the football for him.
No doubt. Blaine?
Absolutely. Ted, man, I appreciate you coming on. It's been wonderful.
Here.
Question for you. So you saw the Saints, make a move. You saw the Lions make a move when they wanted somebody. But the one team we expected to go get a receiver, the Packers, they didn't make that move. In your opinion, what is the thought process behind the ownership, the management behind the Packers?
Oh, God, that's a great question. To not go and replace a guy like Devontae Adams and how much he meant to an Aaron Rodgers is really kind of baffling. But there are a lot of times you don't know where coaches stand with some young players that they might already have on the roster, guys that they feel like may be able to step up. I don't want to use baseball as an analogy. And yet at the same time, there's a lot of times that moves are made on baseball rosters with regards to letting a veteran pitcher go, or, a big time infielder, knowing fully well that you've got a young guy that you have extreme amount of confidence in, and the rest of us just not have had a chance to see play. So perhaps that's a situation in Green Bay. And again, we've got an opportunity here as they go into the second round. There's still going to be some talent in those top 60 or so players at that wide out position. So it's kind of, from my perspective, a wait and see. But a lot of times it has to do with, we just haven't seen maybe something that they've seen, maybe over the course of, off-season drills, or a young guy that they had last year that they feel like is ready to make the next jump.
Yeah, Blaine, let's get the Booster Club. We got any questions?
Yeah, we got a question here from RW Trojan. All right, he says, is it better for Detroit to just roll with Goff one more year and build the rest of the roster around him, or go grab a quarterback that's left this year or maybe one next year?
I would say right now it'd probably be better to go with Goff. There's a guy who's a veteran. He knows the game. He's coming there. They're trying to rebuild after the loss of the longtime quarterback for him there, and just build the pieces around so that if they are then forced, let's say Goff is not their guy, and they're forced next year, and they're picking, let's just say, I don't want to put them in a bad situation.
Yeah, 1 through 3, Ted. We can be honest here.
Then the pieces of the puzzle are already set, and all they've got to do is fill in that one spot. That's what I would do with a veteran quarterback there who's shown, some flash and ability at times. That's what I would do.
Yeah. What else, Blaine?
That's pretty much it right there.
All right.
Let me ask Ted one question real quick. Ted, I know you were leading the charge in the quarterback simulation technology for a long time, and that's how you and I met. What are you working on right now? Tell everybody what's going on.
Well, we're still working on the QB sim, Dave, and the idea behind that was basically that how do you get young players enough repetitions? How do you get them the looks that they need without getting them out onto the field? And what you're basically doing is you're putting 21 other guys at risk on the field to try to get that number one guy ready. And that's not only true at the NFL level, that's true all the way down to high school and junior high football. The development of quarterbacks comes with repetition. So with my Air Force background, I thought about the problem that we had there. And the same thing goes with pilots, right? You've got highly skilled, highly trained guys, but not enough time behind the stick, not enough hours in the cockpit. What does the Air Force do? They put them in hyper-realistic trainers. Well, I thought, hey, with the advancement of the VR industry and the technologies there and the look and realism of, let's say, like a Madden football game, what if you combined all these technologies to give that realistic look to a quarterback, but not in a video game format? And Dave, you know how important this was to me, but to throw a real football.
Yeah.
And so we've been working for a long, long time on putting this together. And then over the course of the last year or two, been able to get into some colleges, get their feedback, working with private trainers across the country that have college, some pros actually as well come in, and a lot of high school kids. So that's still a big emphasis of mine. And then, kind of a fun side project is I've started a little online brand called School Code Sports, which takes the 4-letter school codes that we use in the scouting business, For instance, Michigan, I see the helmet twirling around back there. It's the first two letters of the state that the school's in, and the last two letters is a unique identifier. So MIUN, Georgia, big 5 players yesterday on that defense. GAUN, Air Force Academy, my school, COAF. And we're putting that on T-shirts and hoodies and hats and whatnot, and just kind of a fun sidebar. But the great thing is there are 950 plus school codes that the scouts use across the country to fill in reports and evaluations. And if you go to Liberty and it's a situation of VALB, or you're going to Arizona State and it's AZST, you're right there with the big boys as well. So just a little fun thing that we're doing.
Guys.
Yeah,
you
for
remember
sure.
when we were in the college football
That's
Hall of
exactly
Fame,
what I was
threw in
thinking.
the simulator? That was Ted's company that he started.
Well, I think it's genius.
Yeah,
I think it's
great.
genius. But Ted, great stuff, man. I appreciate you. We need to bring you back on soon, man, when the draft's over, to kind of maybe get a recollection of what you think when the final rounds end up. But again, I can't thank you enough for coming on. A guy that's got Super Bowls under his belt and knows exactly what's going on in that war room.
Appreciate you guys.
Thanks so much, Ted.
See you, man.
All right, take care.
Great stuff. Great stuff.
That's fantastic.
Guy knows the difference.
Yeah, no, I mean,
knows how to
heard
win
it from the head start. Like all the questions we've been asking this week, based off need or availability. What are you thinking? Are guys panicking when their guy goes right before them? I mean, that's fantastic.
Even had a Lions fan get a question in there. All right, let's go round one, winners and losers here.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'll start.
Why the Jets won.
Okay, to me, the Jets were the big winner. I think a lot of people, that's consensus in a draft where there's not a lot of consensus stuff. I think it's consensus that the Jets won round one. Getting Sauce Gardner, we know his ceiling is super high, and his floor is super, I guess you could say high if you want to say that as well. A guy that can come in and lock down one side with what they already have there in New York. You're able to get Garrett Wilson, a guy that we know has a chance to be special on this next level. I thought, he was actually going to go before Drake London. Drake London ended up going before him. And then you're able to make a move to go up and get a guy in Jermaine Johnson, an edge rusher that you didn't think was going to be there, that fell a little bit. So you take care of business at corner, you take care of business at wide receiver, and you take care of business on the edge. Those are 3 huge needs for the Jets. They're not done. I think it was a really smart move at the end, but you got players that most people believe are going to pan out and at worst will be good NFL players at positions that it comes down to on the edge, and whether that's on the line of scrimmage, and on the edge, whether that's on the perimeter, especially when you get down in the red zone, being able to go one-on-one with guys, and I'm sure Garrett Wilson and Sauce Gardner will make each other better. The other round one winners I had, the Eagles, I thought, getting A.J. Brown.
Okay.
When you're not able to make the move to get a Jamison Williams, somebody like that, I thought that was a good move. It's going to help them. Look, Jalen Hurts, no excuses now. No excuses now. You got Devontae Smith, you got A.J. Brown, and then, to stay in the Brown category, the Arizona Cardinals, getting Hollywood Brown. Even looking at some of the Ravens players, and including the quarterback, Lamar Jackson, weren't super thrilled, even though you're getting a hell of a center in Linderbaum, a hell of a center. And I think Lamar Jackson's going to end up falling in love with Linderbaum and the way he plays and the way he operates, whether it's pulling, doing what they do in the zone scheme and the gap scheme there. So give me the Jets, give me the Eagles, and give me the Cards. So I'm sure we'll hit losers next.
I like that. I mean, I agree with you completely on the Jets. Got arguably the best defensive back in the draft, possibly the best wide receiver in the draft. A lot of people had Garrett Wilson as their wide receiver 1, and maybe the 3rd best edge rusher. And they got him in the 20s. So I think it was a fantastic draft, first round, especially for the Jets. I was talking with Richard last night, my father-in-law. He was happy to see the Jets have a good first round. And then I think the Lions. Look, I didn't think
you liked the Lions.
I know you and some others were disappointed in the Lions' first round, but I think you got a high motor, highly skilled guy in Aiden Hutchinson at 2, a hometown kid who's going to give his all for that franchise, try and do everything he can to turn around what they have going there in Detroit. And then you trade up and you get a guy maybe Jamison Williams maybe doesn't have the highest floor of all the wide receivers, especially coming off the injury. But I think we had already talked, he could have the highest ceiling of all the wideouts, an explosive guy. And look, we've said, a lot of these great players, they go to Detroit and they go there and their career dies, right?
Yeah.
But at some point, all of these franchises have a shot to be great. And so you just have to put the pieces around and try and get the franchise back on track. I think the Lions did that yesterday, and I don't agree that they gave up too much to do that.
I feel like that they're so far away. And look, Jamison Williams, I told you he's my favorite wide receiver in this draft. I think he's so explosive, a bomb squad ought to follow him around all the time. But when I look at the roster for the Lions, I feel like you made a move. You had the 32, the 34, and I believe the 46, unless I'm wrong. I know you had the 32 and the 34. You traded that to move up to get J-Mo, and now you're at 46. I just feel like there's so many pieces away. They made a move that a team that's a year away makes instead of a team that is trying to build a roster in the next, 2, 3 to 4 years. The Aiden Hutchinson pick was made for you, basically. The minute Walker's name was off the board and the hometown, kid, I get that. I just thought the Lions acted like they were a team that was a year away. I love Jamison Williams, but to me, Jamison going to Detroit is like getting a Lamborghini and parking it in a junkyard. That's what I think.
No comment on that.
Well, you look at Detroit, I know Jared Goff's not the best, but you have DeAndre Swift at running back, one of the top running backs in the league, top 10 for sure. You have, your offensive line is not terrible and your defense is okay. So I don't think, you went and got a guy. I will never bash on a team to a certain extent if they got a pick and got their guy. You lost 2 picks, a 30 and a 60 plus, I believe.
Yeah, it was 66.
66 to get a 46.
To get a 46.
And to come up to the 12 and get
it.
probably the guy, one of the best receivers in the league. So I'll never bash the Lions for making moves because usually they're teams that they don't make moves. So I'll never.
And on the Jared Goff front, he has led a team to a Super Bowl.
He has, but I don't believe
we're playing what you will about him, but he has done that.
Yeah, if we're playing a game though, do I believe in Jared Goff? I'm gonna go ahead and tell you.
That's a different thing, but
yeah, well,
the Jamison. Here's my thing. I feel like Jamison Williams may outrun Jared Goff's arm a lot. I'm just gonna go ahead and be honest. I don't think Jared Goff has the best arm, and again, like Blaine says, a guy that can smile that wide, I just have a hard time trusting.
Can't trust him.
Who was your winner in the first round?
My winner, I got a couple here, so I'm gonna go with the Tennessee Titans.
Okay.
I like it.
You're big. You've been big on Treylon Burks.
I'm a big Treylon Burks guy. You lose A.J. Brown. A.J. Brown's a phenomenal receiver. All right. A.J. Brown signed a $100 million deal with the Eagles. $100 million plus. You get a guy for the next 4 years that's going to make $14 million probably in total, a younger guy with less energies and actually wants to play for the Tennessee Titans. So in my opinion, that's a win. You avoid a big contract, get a younger guy, kind of the same comp and the same build. Then I'm going to go I feel like both these teams won in this trade. I'm going to go to the Philadelphia Eagles. All right, now you have Devontae Smith. You have A.J. Brown. You add Mountain Davis and Jordan Davis, which is almost
our boy.
You got a young Fletcher Cox. You got a young Fletcher Cox. Who's bigger and probably not as agile, but you're not going to be able to run the ball against Jordan Davis. Well, can I not wait for the Eagles and Jalen Hurts to try to overthrow Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown next year, the entire season? Yeah, I don't believe in Jalen Hurts. I believe in Jared Goff almost more than I believe in Jalen Hurts.
Really?
In my opinion,
we disagree heavily there.
Well, he's not a better passer.
Can run.
Quarterback, if you can just run, then it's not that good.
Well, I don't think
Jared Goff's a way better passer.
I think overall, as a quarterback, I think Jalen Hurts is a better player, a more versatile player than Jared Goff is, in my opinion.
Well, I feel like, if anything, at quarterback, you need to be a more elevated passer than elevated runner.
Who was your biggest loser?
My biggest loser? That would be, this was tough, man. This was tough. I had 3 right down, but I'll give you 2. All right, right now, I'm taking the Cowboys. What are you doing? Yeah. You got a guy in Tyler Smith, lineman from Tulsa, who is one of the most flagged linemen in the NCAA.
Dude holds more than a Swiss bank account.
Only thing he did was hold, and not even that. All right, look at what was on the board. One of the best centers we've seen in a long time at Iowa. Jermaine Johnson. You just lost Randy Gregory. You can't stay healthy on defense. You can't get the quarterback other than Micah Parsons. Why not go get the guy? Am I surprised by this? No, I'm not. It's the Cowboys. Jerry Jones will find a way to mess this up because Jerry Jones thinks he knows it all, and obviously he doesn't. That's why they haven't been in the Super Bowl in so long. Then I'm going to go Saints. I'm really going to go Saints.
You didn't like the Olave pick.
Well, you gave up a lot to go get this kid, all right? And look what was on the board. You went from 16 to 11th, right? And guess who was still on the board at 16? Jihad Dawson from Penn State, who's an absolute freak. And you had Treylon Burks still on the board. So I don't think you had to give all this up to go get this guy with the guys that you already had on the board at 16. I mean, you gave up 2 first-rounders, I believe. Yeah. In my opinion, you don't do that. And then the Pittsburgh Steelers, you reached.
For Kenny?
You reached. And
at 20?
At 20, you reach. I still believe Malik Willis right now is better than Kenny Pickett.
I agree.
He's better than Kenny Pickett. I don't care. He's from Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
I don't care. Congrats. I don't care. You're a hometown kid. I'm not picking you from where you're from. I'm picking you from what you do as a player. And you look at Malik Willis and look at Kenny Pickett, to my opinion, it's not even that close. So those are my losers.
I agree. My losers, I think the Cowboys are right there with you. I'm going to break one of my ultimate rules. I never second-guess Nick Saban or Bill Belichick, but the Cole Strange pick by the Patriots to me was very surprising. In the first round, you're getting a kid from Chattanooga. I mean, you saw the league kind of reverberate. I don't want to doubt Bill Belichick, but I'm really, really wondering how this pick came to fruition. I know the Pats need help on the offensive line, but there were better prospects on the board, in my opinion, but it is Bill Belichick. Again, look, the Packers, too, to me, are a big loser. I am shocked. I am shocked the Packers did not get a receiver with the 22 and 28th pick. I'm going to do my intervention letter later about it. And I get people that say the Packers have had success drafting second-round wide receivers. Devontae Adams, Jordy Nelson. I get that. But how many times, if you've ever gambled on anything, the more times you bet on the same thing to happen, especially in a game of chance like the NFL draft is, regardless of how good your scouting department is, it's always chance. How many times is that same bet going to hit? And if Aaron Rodgers has a 3-year window and you're going to be taking a flyer when you have a draft that is loaded at the wide receiver position, about as loaded, especially at the top, as you're going to get, because there's a big drop-off in what's left. I was surprised they didn't get Christian Watson, though. I really thought they were going to draft Christian Watson. They didn't do it. Not that you got two bad players. Yeah. Wyatt's a good player. Quay Walker's a really good player from Georgia. We get that. But Aaron, I know he went on the Pat McAfee show and said, well, we've got other guys that can do this. Aaron Rodgers is expected to win a Super Bowl. And the reason your season ended last year wasn't because you couldn't stop somebody. You couldn't score. And you have to be able to score in this league. And it shocked me because you had a golden opportunity and you went twice on defense. Now, you better hit or you better hit in free agency. Deebo Samuel better sneak his way up to Green Bay or you better get lucky with who you draft in the second, third, and later round, and maybe a guy steps up. I know you got Randall Cobb, who's older than Gandalf. You've got Lazar. You've got Tonyan at tight end. You've got some guys that are serviceable, but to do what, and it's not like the NFC North is an unbelievable division. The Packers will win the division, but it's not about winning the division. It's doing something when you get in the playoffs. And that, to me, is where this is going to come back to haunt them. Not that they were going to solve all their problems by drafting one wide receiver in the first round, but you could make it a lot easier and take a little bit of pressure off Aaron Rodgers, who we know is a witch of the highest order, and give him a chance with a big-time guy. Treylon Burks gets taken by the Titans in the trade with A.J. Brown. We know about Garrett Wilson. We know about Drake London. You see Chris Olave. You see Jamison Williams. I can go down the list. 6 wide receivers taken, not one of them to the Packers.
Yeah, and we thought that 6 wide receivers would go in the first round.
Yep, I took the under at 6.5.
Which is why we took the under at 6.5. And I thought that 2 of those, the 5 and the 6, would be after the 20th pick. So I said, look, Green Bay will be safe at 22. They don't need to move up because they're going to get great value even at the 5th or 6th best receiver in this class because it's so good. I was wrong about that. All 6 went in the top 18 picks. So 4 picks later, Green Bay's looking at 22, and maybe that affected their choice.
Well, you got snuck. You got snuck by the Lions and the Saints.
I think I know what Green Bay's going to do.
What are they going to do?
I think they're going to draft up in the second round. They're going to get George Pickens.
You think they're going to go George Pickens?
I think they're going to trade up in the second round and get George Pickens.
Well, yeah, they have to do something eventually. And I was going to talk about the Giants, too, real quick, because a lot of people had the Giants as a clear winner yesterday.
Don't believe in Thibodeau, just like you.
Yeah, a clear winner yesterday. And it's hard to argue completely against that because I do think they got the best offensive lineman in this class, in Evan Neal. So that's a fantastic pickup from Alabama. But again, Kayvon Thibodeau, I think he wants to be more of a star than he wants to be a ball player. I think you got him too early. Clearly, they see something that they believe in him. He had success at Oregon.
He's got ability. I don't question his ability. Sure. I question the dog in him.
Yep.
That's what I question, to go out there and handle business and not be about Instagram and TikTok and all this other stuff, which going to New York falls right into what he wanted. He got what he wanted. And the contrast between Evan Neal and Thibodeau, from what they went through in college, the system they went through, and where they're at kind of mindset-wise, in my opinion, after just kind of seeing it and following it, is Las Vegas Grand Canyon wide difference. So to me, it's going to be very interesting to watch how that plays out. You do never know, but I still agree with you yesterday, and they took him at 4, which surprised me because I thought they were going Charles Cross. But We're going to get to the Booster Club heavy in the second half. If you want to watch or listen to the rest of the show, head over to thedailywire.com and become a member. Listen on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Subscribe, leave a 5-star review, and share it with your friends and the people you dislike the most. It may just make you friends. You're welcome. I'm like Dr. Rick. All right, everybody, appreciate you hopping on the other side. Shout out to the Red Hot Chili Peppers. Blaine, Booster Club, information, questions, answers now.
I like that. All right, sidekick. You know what? I want to ask this. All right, it says, hey, guys,